I'm Paul Bennett at Downeast Thunder Creations here in Millbridge, Maine. We're located along Maine's Bold Coast, not very far from the U.S.-Canadian border. And the past couple of weeks I've posted some videos that have to do with making a net. Not the internet. This kind of net, old school. And this is just a small net that I made in the latest video. The first one had to do with making your own net needle, tool you use in making nets. Last week I went over the knot that I use in net making. It's just one of many that people use, probably the most common one. And I showed you using a large heavy line, a couple of heavy lines, two different kinds, make it easier so that you can see how the knot goes. And that's very important because watching me do this, trying to tie these knots with such a small line, it's very hard to see. And of course it's all the same line, same size and same color and everything. It's very difficult to see it. So if you watched last week's video, you know how the knot goes. And this week I will make this net. You'll see me do this. It takes a while. It's kind of a long video. I apologize for that, but that's the way it is with net making. And I haven't made a net. This is the first one I've made in maybe over 25 years now. And so it's been a while. So I made a couple little mistakes here and there, but I can live with them, not a problem. I'm going to make this maybe just a little bit larger. I want to make it a little longer. I want to make it just slightly wider. I'm going to use this just for hanging up inside the cabin of my new boat that I'm building, so I can hang vegetables and fruits and that kind of thing. So let's get started, and I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe and like the video and share it. I appreciate it. And when you subscribe, don't forget to hit that little bell so that you can be notified of upcoming videos. And I've got some pretty cool ones in store coming up as the weather moderates here in Maine. Winter's starting to go away bit by bit. We're in mud season now, and ground's a little soft, but I can start doing more and more outside. So stay tuned, watch the video, try making your own net. It's not that difficult, it's just time consuming. So give it a try. These nets have a lot of different uses, and thanks for watching. First things first. If you have a netting needle, either you purchased one or you made one. This is the first one I made. I made a little bit larger one. You're going to have to load the needle with some sort of twine or other type of cordage you want to use for making your net. I don't remember what size this is. This is a nylon based, it's a woven twine of some sort out of nylon, and fairly heavy. It's used, I used to make my own lobster pots, and I tied my own entrances. You've seen probably netting on lobster pots where the lobsters enter. And anyway, I used to tie those myself. An old fisherman taught me how to do it years ago, and I made my own. And you've seen this before in the first video, just a simple jig to make it easier. First thing you have to do is you have to load the netting needle, or shuttle if you want to call it a shuttle. And what I do, people do this different ways, and you gotta loop a little bit of twine under there, or whatever you're using, and you go underneath, okay, and you can go both sides. Typically I only use one side, but some people like to use both sides like this. And what you're doing is you're just loading up the needle with twine so that, I mean, you don't even have to do this. You could, without this needle, you could be making your net, but you'd have these long pieces you'd have to pull through every time you tie a knot. And by doing this, makes life a little bit easier. So let me just load it up. And of course, it's not going to be enough to do the entire net, and that's fine. And you'll see what I do when I get to that point. And it's just a matter of loading up the needle again and just tying one end of the line to the other, and you just keep on going. And if you're making a very large net, you're going to be loading this needle quite a bit. So these are cheap enough if you're buying them, or you can make more. Make quite a few of them, half a dozen or more, and before you even get started, load every one of them up with twine, so you don't have to stop and reload while you're in the middle of making your net. Although it would be a good time to take a break, I suppose. Give you an excuse to take a break on this, because it can get a little bit tiring if you're constantly tying knots. So I'm just going to keep loading this for the time being, and I'll be right back. The needle is loaded enough for now, and now I need to cut it. But again, this is nylon and it's woven, which means if I simply cut it, it's just going to unravel. That's not good. This is just a soldering iron. It has a line cutting blade attached to it. It's a simple attachment. You can find it in a lot of places. A lot of marine supply stores have it in other areas, or you can get it online probably. And what I'm doing is I'm going to let this warm up for a second or two, and it gets nice and hot, and what it does is it not only cuts the line, but it melts the end, keeps it from unraveling. That's a handy tool. So this I can put out of the way, and now I use this piece of colored construction paper just for contrast, so you can see the line, you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to readjust the camera at a better angle. And I hope this works out well. Okay, I found my fid. I call it a fid. This is simply a gauge. This is soft pine. It's simply a gauge to help define the size of the net mesh. The little squares that are going to be on the net. And you can use any width you want. If you want a larger mesh, you could use something like this when you're wrapping the line around to determine a larger square. You could use one smaller. The smaller you go, the smaller the needle. So they make them even smaller than this for making finer mesh. So anything works. This is just a piece of wood. The only reason this has a little bit of a teardrop shape is because it's comfortable in my hand when I'm making the net, but it doesn't have to be. You could use a ruler. You could use another one of these needles, and you'll see what I'm doing in just a second. Before I get started, I want to take this piece of line and I want to wrap it around twice. Here's once, and the second time I loop around. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a knot here. Now at this stage, for this particular piece, it doesn't matter what kind of knot you tie really. You just want to, you could do a granny knot. It doesn't make any difference. In fact, maybe that's what I'll do just to show you. So just do something that's secure. Okay, so that now when I slide this off, I have a larger loop. Okay, and you're going to see why in just a second, why I did that. But right now I don't want that tail there, so I'm just going to cut it off. I'll leave a little bit, not much. Okay, that's good. Now I'm going to put this in the carabiner. You don't have to have a carabiner. You could put it on a nail, anything, it doesn't matter. And then you're pulling it like this. The net. You want this knot approximately halfway between, if you wrap it around a nail or this carabiner, or it doesn't matter, halfway in between the bottom and the top. I'm right-handed, so I have this line coming down on the left side. I'm going to bring this line over my fid, and I'm coming up through this line through the loop, I should say, through that loop. This is the loop. This is the loop that I'm going to be tying, not this piece here. Now, I'm doing this very loose so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now, if you remember the knot last week, I put a line underneath the loop, right? And then what I did is I took my fid and I went underneath those two, underneath that loop, came across, I'm not doing a very good job of this right now. This is so small and it's hard to show you. But now, what I would be doing is I'd be pulling this tight. But see what happened is, you remember last week I showed you, this knot slips down and it just becomes a slip knot. It's not grabbing. So you got to keep that up above, like that. And then you pull it tight and then it'll grip and then you're fine. Well, okay. So what I want to do is, I want to go one more time. I want to go one more time through that loop. And that'll help to lock it down. Now, and it looks a little confusing now because this line is so small and it's hard to follow, and I'm really not in a good position here. I want this that I want to be in. This is what I wanted to do. That first loop, okay, this line is about halfway. It comes down, it goes underneath the fid, it comes around, I tie my knot, okay? And I drew this up tight. That's what I want to see. What happens is, when I slide it out, this loop is the same size as this loop, relatively speaking, okay? But now, I'm on the other side, and again, I'm right-handed, so all I have to do is just flip that around, and I'm going to repeat that knot, and I think I probably loaded a little bit too much line on this needle because it's getting a little unwieldy. And again, I'm going to come under. I'm going to put this line underneath. I'm going under the fid, like so. And if you recall, that first knot, it was hard to get started to show on the camera. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of flipping this over this way. Let me get a little line off there. I'm flipping this over so I can go under. Oop, come up there. There you go. But before I go to tighten that, okay, before I do that, before I pull this knot down and I tighten it, remember that little lock step, lock that knot so it doesn't become a slip knot when you're pulling it down. Under that loop one more time. Okay. So now, this time the loop is on the proper side. But you can see how I'm starting to create a little bit of a mesh as I'm working my way down. And I'm going to do the same thing. Toss a little line over here. I'm bringing my, get more line out of here. If I didn't have this loaded up as much, it would be a little bit easier to use. Okay. And I've started another one. And I changed the camera because maybe you can see this a little bit better. Yeah, you can see what I've done here. This is as much as I need to go, I think, for this net. Now what I want to do is, okay, this is the one end of the short side of a rectangular net. The longer side is going to go this way. And you can make this any size you want. I mean, you could just keep on going, whatever length you want. And the same thing going the other direction. You could make it square too. It doesn't have to be rectangular. So whatever you're going to use this net for. So what I'll do is I'll undo it from this carabiner. I'm going to start working my way back and forth across, working my way down. So very similar, yet slightly different. Just so I can show you, it might be better if you see this here. So these top loops I want to put on the carabiner. So there's one, there's two, there's three, here's four, and here's a fifth one. There's five. Okay, and that leaves me, if you get all these pulled down, these bottom ones are the ones I'm going to be working with. It's right here. These loops right here that are along the bottom. So I'm going to put the carabiner back in place. Now you can see why it's necessary to have something to hold on to your net while you're making it. And now to go across, what I'm doing is, in a similar fashion, I'm going to go through this bottom loop, just like I did on working my way down, and I'm using my fid, and I'm going to tie the exact same knot. I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and I'm going to tie the exact same knot I did before. I'm flipping this line over, get a little bit more out of there. I'm flipping it over, I'm coming underneath the loop, just like I did before. Whoops, it's got to stay there. And then, before I pull this tight, I want to go underneath this, just one part of that loop, not both, not the whole thing. This is my lock knot. I need to draw down. I'm pulling down with the fid at the same time I'm tightening the knot. Okay, so you can see what I just did there. Now I want to go to the next loop. So one more time, what I'm going to do is I'm putting this under the loop. Okay, there's my fid. I'm putting it over the loop. And what I'm doing here, just as before, I'm going to go underneath that loop. But now I would just want to do that lock knot. Now you don't have to use the lock knot. You might have a type of line that grips pretty good. You don't need it. You can do without it, and it makes the net making a lot faster and a little less complicated. But with this line, I'm using it. Oops, shouldn't do that. Okay, so now I can pull this tight. Okay, and I've got that loop. Here's the next loop that I want to tie onto, right here. And so you don't make a mistake. You can see how you got a knot in between each one. You see how that works. Because it can get a little bit confusing sometimes. I'm going to go underneath this loop. Right there, I hope you can see that. Just like the other one. And let me get a little more line out. There we go. Flipping that over like that. Underneath that loop. I want to draw everything tight. Okay, so now you're going to see what I have here. I have another row going across. And again, because I'm right-handed, I'm just going to take this carabiner and I'm just going to flip the whole thing over. And guess what? Just like before, we're going to do the same thing again. I'm going to take this, my fid, and I'm putting the fid underneath this line coming down, and I'm putting it under the loop just like before, just like all the other times. And once again, see, we're just starting a new row. As simple as that. Just want to get my little lock knot in there. The lock knot makes things, well, I already mentioned it. The lock knot does make things a little bit difficult. It adds to it, complication, especially with this small line. But it does make for a more secure knot. But it's just that everything is all bunched up. You gotta pull tight. So you don't have to undo it each time. If you have a long enough fid, you can just leave it like this. And for the next one, just go underneath. You can do them all like that when you're doing the rows. And just come around. You see? Just keep them all together like that. Tie each knot in succession. I was doing them individually, trying to make it clear, but I don't think I'm doing a very good job of that. But I think for this row, I think it's good enough. I think I can show you. You get the idea now. You know, wash, rinse, repeat. The whole thing, making your whole entire net is going to be like that. Just wash, rinse, repeat. Over and over. You can see what I've done here. I pull this out. See, I have another row tied. You can see what I did here. So for the next row, again, I'm just going to undo the carabiner. I'm going to flip it around. Just like that. Straighten out that knot. And get to do another one. I'm just going to go ahead and remember I go underneath the fid, over and over and under, and make that loop. I ran out of line. I used up the line that was on my net needle, and I still want to do maybe 2 or 3 more rows. No problem. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull out some line and start loading my needle again, just like I did before. And I'll just do this. This will take me a couple of minutes. You don't have to sit through it again. I'm just going to go ahead and load this up, and I'll be back in a minute and show you what I'm going to do. I load a little bit more line on the needle, and I just have to join these 2 ends together. Now, I could do some kind of fancy knot, but all I'm doing here is I'm tying about what amounts to a square knot, but a granny knot works just fine. Any kind of knot you want. Do a fisherman's knot if you like. Pull tight, that's not going to come apart. And now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim these ends. Be right back. I've got the line joined, I trimmed the ends, and now I just continue. Start my next row, same thing, I'm going around, over and under the fid, and up through the loop, and swing that around, put the needle through, drawing it up, and I want to do my lock nut, my lock knot. Getting that little knot through when you're tying a knot can be a little bit of a pain, but you're not doing it all the time. It's just now and then whenever you have to join a line. And I've done that. And you gotta fiddle with it a little bit. That's okay, no mind. And this is not a perfect net. This is the first net that I've made in around 25 years or so. So yeah, I'm a little rusty maybe, but it's still working. I'm doing it okay, I think. Okay, this is as far as I'm going to take it for this particular net. And if I want to, I can always add on to it later. And after that last knot, all I have to do is just cut off the excess material. There we go. And this will just get used on another net. We'll take it off the carabiner. And I did make a mistake. While I was tying it, the last couple of rows, I wasn't able to pull very tight and I got a little discombobulated there and I made a mistake right there. But it's still a net and it's still usable. So I can add a couple more rows. I might add some this way, and I can do the same thing. I can just turn it around, bunch it up, run them back and forth a couple of times. Make a little bit of a hanging net. I think it has to be, yeah, just a couple more rows going lengthwise. Maybe 2 more would do it. Maybe even make it a little bit longer. But there I have. I have a net. And I said it's been a while, and plus I did make that mistake, and that's not cool. But for this type of net, for what I'm going to use it for, it's not going to matter. Try it, and don't worry about making little mistakes. I mean, it happens, and you learn by doing. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. I didn't feel like taking that apart and redoing it again. I figured I could live with it. So it's not a big deal for me. And I haven't done this for a long time. First one I've done in many years. So as I make more of these, I'll get a little better at it. And of course, when I'm not on camera, a little bit different situation. It's a lot faster and easier for me. And you'll find it fairly easy for you too once you get going. Go back to the last video. The link is down below in the video description, and so you can see that knot using the larger size line. It's much easier to see and understand, and once you understand that knot and you go back and you see this, you see what I'm doing, it just makes a whole lot more sense. So that's it for making a very simple net. There's many different knots that are used, and there are different types of nets that are made, and everybody has different ways of tying them, and there are different size meshes. Again, you control the size of the mesh by what you use for a fid. I could have much larger mesh size if I use this, or whatever size you want. Hope you liked the video. I know it's kind of long. Net making can be a bit boring, but thanks for sticking with me.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor?